So I'm gonna very quickly introduce Mark Macleod, who is the acting operations and projects curator at the Museum of the University of St. Andrews. This is gonna be 1 hour of talks by 3 speakers on interactive technologies, not only in museums but also in other public spaces, in particular the library, which I believe is why many of you are here. We're organizing these. This is the second one of several events that we're organizing in collaboration with Vicky from the library and the university, the School of Computer Science, trying to get a little bit some interest and gauging some interest towards working together in interactive technologies that could be good in several environments, like public spaces, perhaps also special collections, things like that. So without further explanation, I'm going to just let Mark go.
Thanks very much for asking me to talk about MUSA and our interactives. Can everybody hear me okay? Sometimes I do speak a bit fast, but I'll try and keep it sensible. So Miguel asked me last week to do this, so we've got a mixture of what's happening in the world of interactives in museums, and also what we have at MUSA and what we would like to have perhaps at MUSA. And all this technology took obviously a wee bit longer to set up than expected. We'll run through a very quick history of why museums and galleries exist. Back in the 16th century, when cabinets of curiosity were what the wealthy and the travellers would be gathering for themselves, and then they'd show off their collections to their friends and family and visitors as a way of status. In MUSA, we have this cabinet of curiosities remanufactured in Gallery 4, and in the bottom left you can see our oldest man-made object that we have in the collections, which is some papyrus. But there you see examples of the natural world, you see examples of man's engineering, you've got music, objects from Asia, objects from a lot closer. And it still instills that idea of wonder and that sense of curiousness that people have. What does it mean to be a human being is one of the fundamental questions that museums try and answer. Sir Hans Sohn was probably the most ambitious collector in the 18th century. His 71,000 objects were what became the British Museum. They paid £20,000 to his family so that they'd get 71,000 of these objects. And it's gone on, it's got millions and millions of objects now, obviously. But that was really the first founding of a museum to make it more accessible to the public to come and see it. And what they said is it's for the studious and curious Persians of the 1750s. So I think today that's still what museums do, but we do so much more as well. The control of the information in museums for those 200 years had all come from the curators themselves. The model that it talks about is cultural transmission. So if I've gone off to France, collected an object and brought it back, it's going to be my interpretation as the curator that you're going to be subjected to, whether you like it or not. So for 200 years, curators of museums were fundamentally very important in defining what was fashionable, cultural, and what kind of knowledge was being disseminated to people who visited museums. And this is the way it continued, even up until 1929. This is the establishment of the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Alfred Barr was their first director, curator, and he had a massive map like this. This is just the Cubism in abstract. He had a massive mind map of how all the art movements that they had objects, collections from, would work together. And you were not allowed to see a Cubist work until you'd seen something from the 1890s. And that was his control of how you went through the space. So that's 1920s, and that's modern art. That's, you can imagine that was an opportunity for museums and galleries to break the mold and be different. But they chose not to. Now, in the last 15 years or so, this has become a lot more of a contentious issue. This is The Participatory Museum was a book written by Nina Simon, who lives in San Diego, but it's full of really good case studies, and it contains crowdsourced information. She's worked in many places of different ideas to what a participatory museum would be. And it's her definition of a participatory institution that I'm focusing on as far as what a definition of what an interactive should be in a museum space. It's a place where where visitors create, share, and connect with each other around the content. So it's almost like the museum is creating a space, a platform for people to engage with each other. We want them to create things, we want them to share things, and we want them to use the collection to make new memories with each other and new ideas with each other. So bear that in mind as we go through some of these examples. Probably the easiest place where interactives are found in museums is the science centres and exploratoriums of this world. It's much easier to define gravity by seeing it happen than actually 50 words on a label. And so they have been very strong in the field of hands-on, let's experiment, let's do things, to try and educate people in the ways of the science, because it is really a fact-based idea, whereas museums are that bit more subjective. Children's museums are also very good, but that's purely a practical point of view. If you can keep the kids in there long enough, then mum and dad are a bit happier. And if you tire them out, then that's all the better. So what's happened since the last 15 years or so? Museums have started to think a little bit more outside the box. Academics like Howard Gardner and George Hine have been leading the field in learning theories for Howard Gardner and education constructivism for George Hine. And what their conclusions are, everybody learns different ways, everybody needs different methods to give them a chance to learn. So if you want an interactive that's educational, then you have to look at what these guys have been writing about. George Hine talks about people coming with their own educational construct. So if I go and see the Mona Lisa, as opposed to Norman going to see the Mona Lisa, it's a very different experience because we all bring our own baggage or our own context to it. And so museums have started to consider these elements. And the easiest place you can do that is somewhere like an interactive. Could you imagine if I brought my context to the Mona Lisa's label and wrote it down there as to what I thought it was about? It's asking for a whole lot of trouble. It's not quite Wikipedia yet. But as far as interactives go, you can have that little bit more subjectivity to it. And you can be more specific as to what you want people to achieve. So these are 3 examples of very simple interactives that we have at Musa. Simple in the sense of how they operate with the visitor. We've got stamps there, which is really that simple. Very low tech. One stamp is our Musa logo, another one is St Andrews University. We make sure the paper's stocked, extremely simple to operate. The one on the left, at great expense, was designed bespoke for the opening of Musa 4 years ago. It's a game that has an archery element to it because it's beside the case with about 40 silver medals that were all won during the 17th to the 18th century in St Andrews. So the game element is exciting. It's dead easy to do it once you've worked out how it works. But for a first-time user, it's really good. And it also contains all the information about medals. And at the end, once you've got your points, you can then go and create your own medal using information based on templates that we have from the collection. So it's quite simple, very expensive, extremely expensive. Touch screens 4 years ago were not cheap. And it has been broken on and off for, I believe, the last 3 years. I've only been here since May, and there's 2 screens, and I've spent 6 months trying to get the other screen fixed, and it still hasn't been done. So very problematic. The other one is the modern stereoscope and the taxiphone. So the taxiphone is something which exists in reality, and it's in case 3 in the gallery, so you can see the original one. And it's a method of seeing 2 pictures in 3 dimensions based on the 1860s. So the slides the pictures we have in it are of St Andrews back then. People really do enjoy it, but you don't realise it's an old object because it's designed so well. All it needs is a light shining through. Simple. The modern stereoscope is doing exactly the same principle, but it's using a hard drive, and you need Photoshop to put 2 pictures that are identical together, flip one round, and then mirror it. So it's really difficult to upload new images to it. First, it's expensive from the software point of view, then you have to have the knowledge of how to do it, and then you can put it on there. But it looks really good and it's really simple for the visitor. They don't see any of that. But the hard drive on that has broken and has needed replaced a couple of times. So sustainability is a bit of an issue with these 2 bottom ones. So let's turn the clock back to 2005 again. I told you about Museum of Modern Art in the 1920s. Well, in 2005, a college in New York decided that they didn't like the way that the Museum of Modern Art was engaging with their visitors. Podcasts, you can see the iconic Apple with the iPod, they've just come out and people had learned how to do podcasts. iTunes Store had opened and you got mass dissemination of media. These college kids then went into MoMA and recorded their own podcast, so effectively doing their own audio guide. And they designed a website and made it available to anybody who wanted to hear it. Now they're not experts, some of them were amateur artists, some of them were academic students, but realistically they are not qualified to be speaking on Picasso as far as a museum is concerned. Then, not only did they do that, they invited everybody else to go into MoMA and record their own podcasts and send them to them and spread them around. So, really, really challenging the establishment. You can only imagine what that kind of impact had on the curators at MoMA when they first discovered. First of all, that there's things called podcasts. Secondly, that people can come into their space and say what they like about their art and then spread it around the world. And this, to me, is a fundamental turning point in when the visitor began to gain more traction and more power as to how art and museums galleries and museums began to interpret their collections. And it's because of this that it's becoming a lot more common now that museums are a bit more understanding about it. In the States, there's the theory of meaning making is all over the museums. So the paradigm, which is the 200-year model of curator knows best. I'm learned, I've studied, I know about these people, I'm going to tell you how it works. That's becoming a little bit more eroded every week because people can do their own interpretations and share them with whoever they like. They could always do it word of mouth, but nowadays it's so much easier if you have a blog, if you have a podcast yourself. And so the meaning making is becoming much more important to a museum to understand. So it comes back to me and Norman going to the Louvre to talk about the Mona Lisa. We both have our own information and we'll both make our own meanings based on that model. So how can museums help interpret that fact? Well, we look to the wider cultural ideas. This is Forrester's research back in 2006. So just after the art mobs law in New York, and this is from Groundswell Britain, which is published in 2008. We all know that this is how the world is going. How many people here would call themselves creators on the web? Who's got blogs? Who tweets? Who's got Facebook pages? It's so radically different just in this short 7-year period that those percentages are going to be a little bit different now, and you do overlap. I would say I'm a creator, I have a blog site, but I don't create on that many sites. But I am quite inactive as well. I do a lot of lurking on Facebook because I don't like Facebook. But we all have those personalities, and so when we're talking about interactive, we want them to be widespread beyond the walls of the museum. We can consider these kind of models. And museums have never been that good at playing with their other friends, apart from libraries, obviously. But the high street, the cinema, the sports, there always seem to be competitive competition for them, or you don't find many people in museums who are that interested in these other areas. it's all changing. The discipline is so much more demanding that you need to be aware of how technology works now. There's a lot of people in the British Museum, National Museum of Scotland who've been there 30, 40 years, and local authorities. But as things move on, the people who are taking those posts are more aware and digital natives. So these things can really inform how we work with interactives. This is probably our best example of an interactive which meets what I said earlier on about Nina Simon. It creates, you have the ability to share, and it allows you to work around the content of the museum or of the town. You get a chance to go and record your personal story of St Andrews. We then have to moderate it because this was built 5 years ago, and then it's shared for the wider audience. And a proper interactive should do that. It should consider the visitor. How easy is it to operate? Nice big buttons, touch screen. How good is it for the museum? Well, we're consistently getting new data, new information about visitors and what their experiences are in St Andrews. And as students in St Andrews, that's a hugely important emotional time in your life. And we're able to capture that. So hopefully further down the line, that could be really useful data. And for the other audience at large, you can go on and then you can search, see if your friends loaded a memory up for you. There's also a camera in the top there. So you can see images of people as they're recording them. 5 years ago, cutting edge. I loved this when it came out. As a visitor, I came to St Andrews and I told the whole of Scotland about it. Now that I work here and have responsibility of trying to make it function, I've got a whole different feeling towards it, and it's not positive. So I would love for this to be redesigned or reworked, because it could be and should be accessible to the web. People should be doing it from all over the world, from an alumni point of view. There's nothing stopping us from doing that now, except time and a little bit of money. But that, I think, is our best example of what Nina Simon talks about. And I'd encourage all of you to go in there and give it a go. We're a little bit backlogged in some of the memories, but we are doing it from the latest one. So if you do want to go and record something, we'd love to have it and share it with the wider people. Some museums have tried to go interactive and go digital with applications. I don't know if you can clearly see very well, but the tags that they're put in is travel, business, information, games. A lot of them are they're trying so hard to work. Realistically, most of them just tell you how to find a museum, tell you what's on at the museum, or are just their audio guide information in your pocket. And while that's all very good, that's not what interactive means. They're not meeting any of the objectives of creating, sharing, or creating new content. So that's really a poor example of it. And I warn people to avoid it. You'd be far better investing the money you're paying for that app to invest to make your website optimized to work on mobile phones, so that people, all they want to do initially on your website is find out when you're open, then find out where you are, then what's the exhibition on. So I make sure people have thought of that first before diving into the iTunes. I'd be remiss not to talk about our other products into town. This is an exhibition done with Special Collections, which is on at the Gateway Galleries. And as an experiment, this is open until the 8th of December. As an experiment, we've put in a few hidden augmented reality bits. Because we are quite small, it's all based on do we know how to do it. So it took a little bit of time to do it, but Aurasma Lite is a free application on all smartphones. And we've had it working successfully for a number of people who've gone in there. One of them is you see inside the book. So the book is shut, but you can see the first page of it, which is a beautiful illuminated manuscript. And the other two are actually in Musa. So the picture that you see there has got, that's taken from the 1898, the picture that's on the wall. And within it, there's two bits of sculpture which are now in Musa. So I've just taken really nice pictures of them from Musa and stuck them in the wall. So if you have a smartphone and you want to have a little bit of a play, please go down there. It's on, you have to find channel Musa. But if you're in the space and you have Aurasma Lite open, it should show you that these three images exist. I've done one in USA too, but it's illegal, so I can't tell you about that. It's got a picture of by Jacques Louis David, which I haven't got authority to share, so I couldn't possibly tell you which drawer it's in Gallery 2. As an organisation, we try and be digital, but on our blog there, I've written how you can make it work at the Gateway Galleries as well. So that's showing you where the app is and what stages you have to go through to get that on your smartphone. And if you do get it working, please let me know. Erasmus doesn't allow you to have stats, whereas one of the other ones, Layer, does, but we did it in Erasmus this time. Almost finished, time's running out. So what do we want to do in the future? Well, we get 35,000 visitors a year to Musa and about another 10,000 to the Gateway Galleries. And we're very keen to make them as happy as possible by giving them new things to help create things, to give them opportunities to share their experiences. Overwhelmingly on TripAdvisor, people do like us, but we want more people to go on TripAdvisor to tell us that they like us, or to tell us about their experiences. So we are working with SACHI, the School of Computer Human Interaction, on a tourism kind of product, which is very exciting because our visitors do come from all over the world and there's lots of opportunities. We are going to be launching a multimedia guide in the old school of ideas, so it's still very much one way of information, but we're open to new ideas and we'd like to do whatever we can for the public to come and enjoy themselves with us. You know, we're on Foursquare, we're on TripAdvisor, we're on all these things to try and get people engaged with us whatever way they want to. How long have I got left? There we go. Am I done?
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for listening.